Hello, my dear kids. How are you all? I hope you all had a great holidays and a great time with your families, right? Fine. Now let us all come back to the class. Children, from today onwards, we are going to start our second semester. Fine. The subject is EVS and we are going to start our semester from today, and you all have to listen to the classes and keep writing your notes. Fine? Okay. Now let's see which is that lesson that we are going to discuss today. Here you can see the lesson name. Lesson number 1, skeletal system. The lesson number 1, skeletal system. So children, you all can open your textbook of page number 198. Page number 198. Unit 1, the living world, and the lesson name, skeletal system. Fine, let's move to the chapter. Yes. So here, children, you can see. As you all know, you all have studied in your previous classes that our body consists of different organs, right? Like stomach, liver, lungs, and kidney. So, there are many organs collectively form an organ system, right? Our body consists of many different organs like stomach, liver, lungs, kidney, etc. So these organs collectively together they will form an organ system that we call it as a organ system. Those organ system which work together to perform a particular function for the body. We all have studied that each organs of our body perform their own functions, right? Similarly, in our body we all can see that bones, right? So the bones, the collection of bones are known as skeletal system. So the skeletal system provides a structure to the body and protect internal organs. Fine. Here you can see the skeletal system. Here other organs like digestive system, respiratory system, nervous system, circulatory system, etc. So now in today's class we are just focusing on, or we are just discussing the concept skeletal system. And skeletal system always provides a structure to the body and protects internal organs. So now let's see how what is skeletal system and how it works. Firstly, what exactly the skeletal system? The skeletal system is a framework of bones. Yes, here you can see the image, right, where all the bones are collectively formed a frame that is known as skeletal system. Here you can see this is a framework of a skeletal system. Here all bones are bind together to give a shape and structure to our body. Fine. Then children, here you can see there are 206 bones in an adult human. Fine. There are 206 bones in an adult human skeleton, whereas a child, the small child, has more than 350 bones. Did you all understand? A human adult has a 206 bones while a baby has 350 bones. So by looking at this, if you had got a question like why, that is because initially the child will be having 350 bones. Later on, all the bones fused together. That means they combined or they fused together to form a human skeletal system. So after fusion, all the 350 bones becomes a 206. As we grow, the bones will get fused, so that 350 bones will become a 206 bones in an adult human skeleton. Fine. Next, if you come to the types, there are different parts of human skeletal system. Human skeleton system has a different parts. Let's see which are they. They are skull, backbone, rib cage, and limbs. Which are the parts of human skeletal system? Can we all say together? Yes, that is skull, backbone, rib cage, and limbs. So now let us discuss each one of them. Firstly, the first part of a skeletal system is skull. A skull protects the brain. Here you can see this image is a skull. The skull always cover our brain, right? Which means what? The skull protects the brain. The skull always will be covered around the brain to give protection for the brain. We know our brain is how delicate, right? So that it has to be protected by any of the material. So here a bone, that is skull, act as a protector for the brain. And also the skull is made up of 22 bones. The skull is made up with a 22 bones, and there are 8 flat bones interlocked together to give a shape to head. So children, here you can see that the whole skull is made up of 22 bones, and there are 8 flat bones are present in a skull that are being interlocked together to give a shape. So that's why we all have a different shape. Like our head is having a different shape, that is based on the how that flat bones are interlocked together. Based on that, we people have a different shapes of head. Fine. And also there are 14 bones that make up the face. Fine. So if you just add 8 flat bones and the 14 this bones together will gives you 22 bones, right? So our skull is having a 22 bones. In that, 8 flat bones interlocked together to give a shape, and other 14 bones are interlocked to give or make up the face. Now all bones in the skull are fixed except the lower jaw and upper jaw. Which means what? The lower jaw, that is the movable bone that enable us to talk and eat, and the upper jaw that help us to talk. See, here you can see the above part is upper jaw and the below part is lower jaw. So these two bones are help us to talk and eat. The upper jaw always have a teeth. You can see here, right? And also the lower jaw also having a teeth. You can see, right? Yes. In the skull, no bones are movable except upper jaw and lower jaw. And these two bones are movable in the skull and help us to talk and eat food. And also children, the skull also has a holes for eyes and nose. You can find, right, the holes here. There are holes for the eyes, and here there are holes for the nose. Okay, this is all about skull. Now let us move to the next part, that is backbone. What is backbone actually? The backbone protects the spinal cord. We know our skull that is there to protect brain. Similarly, the backbone protects the spinal cord. If you just observe this figure, you can see where the backbone will be present, right? Can you see? Your backbone will be present here at your back. Okay, then it is made up of 33 small bones. Our skull was made up of 22 bones. Here our backbone made up of 33 small bones, and they are called as vertebral column. And the the skull is attached to the backbone is called a vertebral column. That vertebral column will be made up of 33 small bones. Here you can see these kind of small bones together, that is 33 small bones together form a backbone. That those small bones are known as vertebrae. Fine. Okay, then if you want to feel that where our backbone is present, here you can feel your backbone by running your hand along the central portion of your back. If you just touch the central portion of your back, you will be able to find the backbone that is present in your body. Fine. Okay, children. Now let us move to the next part, that is rib cage. What is rib cage and what is the function of this? We'll see. In a rib cage, you can see there are 12 pairs of ribs that form a cage of bones around the chest called the rib cage. So, children, in the word rib cage, you can split that into two, that is rib as well as cage. Whereas rib is nothing but ribs are thin and curved bones and protect our heart and lungs. Here you can see it is a ribs. It is a rib cage. Here you can see the bones which are very thin and curved, right? So many number of thin and curved bones are bind together to form a cage. Then after binding many curved bones, we will be able to form a cage that is known as rib cage. That is a cage that formed by using a many number of thin and curved ribs. So this will be the formation of rib cage, and our rib cage help us to protect the heart and lungs. Here you can see, right, our respiratory system is present, heart, lungs are protected by the rib cage. This will be present at the chest portion. So this is known as rib cage, and that helps or the protects heart and lungs. And also you can see here a long bone at the center of the chest. Here you can see at the center of the chest, that is at the center of the rib cage, you can see a long bone, right? That ribs are attached to a long bone at the center of the chest is called sternum. That is called a sternum. That is the longest, that is the long bone that is attached at the center of the chest, and it is known as sternum. And also, like, it all the ribs are not attached to the sternum. Here if you just see, what do we think? We think that all the ribs are, that is the curved bones, are attached to the central bone, right? But here all the ribs would be attached to the center of the chest, but except the two bones. You can see this figure. The last two pairs of ribs are not attached to the sternum. Here, sternum is the long bone at the center of the chest. Here, all the ribs are not attached to the sternum, and those two pair or like sorry, those two bones, a pair of bones are called as floating ribs. Here you can find at the bottom those two bones are not attached to the sternum, right? The sternum is the center bone. So those two bones who are not attached to the sternum are called as floating ribs. Yes. Now, if you want to feel your rib cage that is present in your body, you can do like this. You can run your fingers across the chest so that you will be able to find your or to feel your rib cage. Now, let us move to the next part. That is, another part of a skeletal system is limbs. So, in the case of limbs, you can see a two pairs, that is four limbs, that is known as upper limbs or arms, hand, hind limbs, that is lower limbs or legs. So, children, two types of limbs are four limbs and hind limbs. Four limbs can also be called as upper limbs or arms. Our arms is known as upper limbs and our legs are known as lower limbs. So let us try to understand about this. Upper limbs have two parts. As I told before, upper limbs in the sense that is nothing but our arm. So you can remember like this. Upper in the sense the upper portion, right? So our arms will be upper limbs. Lower limbs in the sense our legs comes at the lower level of our body. So that lower limbs in the is nothing but our legs. Like that you can remember. So now children, let us see. Upper limbs have a two parts. Upper limbs itself have a two parts, that is upper arm and lower arm. Upper limbs is nothing but arms. So arms can be divided into upper arm and lower arm. So what is upper arm? The upper arm is made up of a single bone. It is called as a humerus. The upper arm that is made up of a single bone, that is known as humerus. Here you can find the humerus. Sorry, here this is the upper arm. Upper arm is made up of a single bone called humerus. This bone is humerus and it is joined at the elbow to a pair of bones that form the lower arm. So what is lower arm then? The number of smaller bones are joined to form the hand, which is attached to the lower arm. That is known as lower arm. So here the humerus, that is upper arm, joined to the lower arm by a number of smaller bones, that is known as lower arm. You can see the figure here. See, at the upper arm you can find only single bone, that is humerus. Here then after that a number of bones are joined to form a hand, that is known as lower arm. Now let us see what is lower limbs. So children, don't get confused. Under limbs you have a two types, that is upper limbs and lower limbs. Upper limbs are nothing but our arms and lower limbs are nothing but our legs. So in upper arms you can find two different parts, that is upper arm and lower arm. Similarly in lower limbs you can find two parts, upper leg and lower leg. The upper leg is made up of a single bone called femur or thigh bone, and which is the longest bone in the human body. Yes children, here you can see that our upper leg is made up of a single bone called femur. and this femur is also known as thigh bone, and which is the longest bone in the human body. If you just ask the question like which is the longest bone in our skeletal system, you must able to write the answer as femur. Femur is the longest bone in our body, and which is the longest bone in the human body. Fine. Okay, I'll show you the image. See here, you can see, right? This first half portion will be our upper leg, and other portion, the bottom portion, will be our lower leg, and the bone which is present at the upper leg is known as femur. This is femur, and this that is highlighted with red color, right? That is known as femur, and that femur is the longest bone in our body. It is also known as thigh bone. So our femur always present at the thigh portion. Now, lower leg. What is lower leg then? A lower leg is made up of two bones that joint the femur at the knee. Here you can see the bones which are present at the lower leg are joined to the femur. This is known as lower leg. So children, I hope you all have understood the parts of the skeletal system, that is skull, backbone, rib cage and limbs, right? These are the four important parts of a skeletal system. Now let us see the next concept, that is the functions of the skeletal system. So that, as I told before, each organ system in our body perform a specific function, right? So here let's see what is the function of the skeletal system. The first function is it supports the body and helps to keep its shape. Yes, so children, if you just imagine that how would be your body without bone, you can tell that without skeletal system, our body would be like floppy, like jelly. Here you can see that, right? Without bone, our body would be like this, like jelly kind, and we would not we would not be able to have a specific shape, and we would be not able to walk, right, or to sit or to stand anything. So without skeletal system, our body would be like jelly. So that our skeletal system helps to keep our body with the correct shape. The next function, it protects the body's soft organs like the brain, the lungs and the heart. Yes, just now we discussed that how each part of a skeletal system protects the delicate organs of our body. For example, the skull bone is protect our brain, and the rib cage protects our lungs and the heart, right? So see here how it looks. This is brain, and that brain is covered by the skull, and here the respiratory system, heart, lungs are covered by the rib cage. Next function, some bones are hollow from inside and filled with small matter called bone marrow. Blood cells are made in the bone marrow. Yes, children, here you can see that the bones will be having a kind of material, that is bone marrow. Here you can see that, right? So blood cells, that is in our body, all the blood cells are made in this bone marrow. Fine. What is the next function? That is, it like the skeletal system helps in the movement of different part of a body. Bones can move because they are connected to muscles. So movement is another function of the skeleton. The skeleton system helps us to move from one position to another position. So these are the basic functions of the skeletal system. Now let's see the next concept, that is joints. So children, basically what do you mean by joint? We know joint in the sense combining any two materials, right? So here you can see a joint is a place where two bones meet. Since we are talking about skeletal system here, like making the two bones join together is known as joints. So a joint is a place, it is a place where two bones are made. Then we all know, to join any two materials we need something, right? For example, if I want to join or if I want to join a pencil and with another pencil, what do I need to have? That is a fevicol, right? By using fevicol I can make any two things to join. Similarly here, to join two bones we need some material. That material is known as ligaments. The bones are held together by the material ligaments. So ligaments are strong, flexible bands of tissues. Here ligaments are nothing but a tissue that are very strong, flexible. By making use of this ligaments, the bones are joined together. So here you can see the image. See here, two bones are joined and in between them there is a material that, or that is, there is a tissue that is known as ligament. Then joints also have a four types, that is movable joints. We'll see one by one. That is ball and socket joint, hinge joint, pivot joint and gliding joint. These four are the types of movable joints. Let's see one by one. First one is the ball shaped or a ball and socket joint. S. This type of joint allows the maximum movement, which means this type of joint help us to move in many direction. And here you can see the figure how two bones are, like it has been joined. See here, the one bone is like ball and that is joining to other cup shaped socket. So that's why we call this kind of joint as ball and socket joint. Here one bone is like a ball and another like a cup shaped socket. So when those two bones held together, that forms a ball and socket joint. These joints are example of our, these bones are fits into cup shaped socket. Fine. And here you can see that this kind of bones are found in the shoulder part and hip joint. Fine. This kind of bones are present at your shoulder and at your hip. Next type of joint, that is hinge joint. This type of joint allows movement only in one direction. That means that could be backward or that could be forward. For example, children, this kind of bones work like a hinges of a door. Here you can find, I think you have seen this material in your home. That is, the door will be attached with this kind of material that is known as the that is known as hinges of a door. Similarly, on basis of this concept, this hinge joint also works. That means you can push the hinge joint or you can pull, like how we push or pull the door, like way we can push or pull the hinge joint, that is only in one direction. And these kind of bones are present at knees, fingers and toes and etc. Now, the next joint, that is this type of joint, that is pivot joint. This is known as pivot joint. So pivot joint, this type of joint is found where the skull meets the top vertebrae or vertebral column. We know vertebrae or a vertebral column is nothing but our backbone, right? Part of a skeletal system. So when skull, that is head, will join that backbone, at that point you can find the pivot joint. We know a skull is a different part of a skeletal system, and the backbone is a different part of a skeletal system. When those two bones are joined together, at that joint is known as pivot joint. So how pivot joint help us? That help us to move up or down or sideways of our head, which means this type of joint allows you to move your head up, down and sideways, and also it is found between the head and vertebra of your backbone. Next, gliding joint. So here this type of joint is found in the wrists, ankles and between the vertebrae, and it allows our back to bend, twist and turn. Here you can see how it would be. This is gliding joint. So our gliding joint looks like this. So children, these are the four types of joints, that is ball and socket joint, hinge joint, pivot joint and gliding joint. Now we'll see, that is most joints are covered with a tough and elastic substance called cartilage. Yes children, you can see all our bones or all the joints are covered with a tough and elastic substance, that is known as cartilage. Then what is the function of this? It protects the bones by preventing them from rubbing against each other, and ears and nose are made up of cartilages. So children, there will be a chance that when two bones joining together at that time, they may rub, like rubbing can be happened. So to avoid that, against them the cartilage will be presented, that helps the or that protects the bones by preventing that rubbing. So then our ear and nose are made up of this cartilages. Fine. Now the next concept is muscles. What is muscles actually? Muscles in our body hold the bones together and help in a movement. They contract and relax to produce a movement. You all can do this when you just, like all the muscles, if you just touch your skin, where you can find that all the muscles in our body are hold the bones, right? When you just press strongly, you can find the bones. So around the bone, like around the bones, you can find that the muscles are attached to it, right? So when you just contract and relax, that would be your movement. So there are more attached to bones by strong fibers are called tendons. What is tendons? The muscles that are attached to the bone by a strong fibrous, that is called as a tendons. Here you can see the tendons, where you can find the tendons, that is where the muscle and the bone are getting attached. At that place you can find a strong fiber, that is known as tendons. Then muscles also itself having a types, that is voluntary muscles, involuntary muscles and cardiac muscles. What is voluntary muscles? These muscles are under our control. These muscles will be present at our arms, legs, hands, feet, necks and at shoulders. So yes children, voluntary muscles are nothing but the muscles which are attached to the bone, and these kind of muscles will be under our control, which means here we can have a control over it. These kind of muscles, on that we can have a control, so that it will be present at our arms, legs, hands, feet, neck and shoulders. And also voluntary muscles are also called as skeletal muscles. You have to remember this. Voluntary muscles also called as skeletal muscles. Next type, involuntary muscles. These muscles are not under our control. They work in their own, and they control breathing, flow of blood, movement of foot, and it occurs in walls of the internal organs. And involuntary muscles are under the control of brain and spinal cord, which means, so children, involuntary muscles where we do not have any control over this type of muscles. Fine. And also the muscles in the, or like all the delicate organ systems are covered with this involuntary muscles. Here you can find, right, all the organ systems are covered with this kind of muscles, and that's why this muscle is also called as a smooth muscles. So our organs will be covered with, our all internal organs will be covered with this involuntary muscles, that is also known as smooth muscles. Next, the third type, that is cardiac muscles. The muscles in the heart are called cardiac muscles. They are involuntary in the action, which means, what do you mean by involuntary now? Yes, that means we do not have any control over this type of muscles. They work automatically. So the muscles which are present in the heart also not controlled by ourselves, so they are involuntary in action. And also the muscles of the heart work all the time throughout our life. Yes, we know that the heart is the very important part of our body, so that this cardiac muscle work all the time throughout our lifetime. So these are the type of muscles, that is voluntary muscles and involuntary muscles and cardiac. We know the involuntary muscles are known as smooth muscles, and the third type is cardiac muscle, and the first type voluntary muscles also called as skeletal muscles. And the examples you can see, the involuntary muscles, that is smooth muscles, are present at internal organs. The cardiac muscle will be look like this, that present at the heart, and the skeletal muscles are present at our knee, legs, shoulders, hands, etc. These are the structure of those three different muscles. Now, how muscles work? We all know muscles have the ability to contract and relax, like this. Here you can see your hand can be pressed, or your hand can be later released. When you just press, that will be contract. When you just release your arm, that is known as relax. So this is the function done by our muscles. So that what would be the result of this contract and relax? When a muscle contracts, it shortens, right? Yes, it contracts. When we press the muscle, it will be shorten and thickens. And when a muscle relaxes, it returns to its original size. And the contraction and relaxation of muscles help in producing movement. When we do the contract and relax, so that what will happen is that produces the movement by pulling the bones. So this movement helps in walking, bending, jumping, etc. So the muscle work in a pair. For example, when we bend our arm, one muscle contracts and the other relaxes. Here you can see when we just contract a muscle or an arm, so that some movement will be happen, right? We can move our arms like how we want. That is by contracting the muscles and relaxing the muscles. So this is the major function of our muscles. So children, I hope you all have understood today's class. That is, we discussed what is skeletal system and the types of skeletal system, that is skull, backbone, rib cage and limbs. Then the function of the skeletal system. Then the next concept is joint, and under joint we have a types, that is ball and cup shaped bone. Then what is the next type, that is hinge joint, pivot joint, gliding joint, and also we discussed about the cartilage. Then about muscles, voluntary muscles, involuntary muscles and cardiac muscles, and the function of it. So children, your notes will be sent through word document. So by today evening I'll be sending you all the notes in a word document, so that you can make a note of that. You can write the notes in your, make a new, like keep a new book for your EVS subject for the second semester, and in that new notes start to write the notes which I will send you through WhatsApp document. Fine. Thank you children, have a great day.